of all those things. And if you look at this figure given in the screen, you'll get a better understanding. In the first figure, it's shown as the window opening, and you can see where lintels are placed above and bottom of the window. So this lintel is basically placed to give a proper fixture for this window opening, in the window frame, and also to transmit the load to the side base. So I hope you have understood why lintel is provided. And if you come to the top of the door opening, you can also see a lintel above the door opening. And basically it will be 150 mm. There will be some bearing for lintel, so that bearing means it will be projected outwards a little more than the width of the door opening. So that's done in order to give a proper load distribution. So this is the component which is known as a lintel, and this is mainly in most of the cases it will be a reinforced cement concrete. In some cases we can also provide a wooden lintels and also steel lintels, but commonly what we provide is also RCC, that means reinforced cement concrete. And next you can see, you will understand what is meant by beam. So actually this is the component which is known as a beam, and you can see the bottom figures also. Does Chandana want to say anything? Chandana, could you please mute your mic? Okay, so you can see the figure of the beams. You will understand what is meant by beams from this figure. And in the parapet, this is a figure, the bottom middle one is a figure taken from the top of roof. So you can see what's meant by parapet. This is actually a side protection given along the edge of the roof. So this is known as parapet, and you can see sunshade. Where the sunshade is kept, it is constructed just above the window opening. So this is the components of building what we have discussed, and we have one more figure for much better explanation. In this, you can see the lintels are placed in a window. This lintel is placed in the top and bottom of the window opening, and then a door opening, it will be placed above the door opening. Chandana, could you please mute your mic? So I hope you understood what is meant by lintel and where we are providing it and what's the purpose of providing a lintel, because there's an opening and we cannot directly provide any masonry or any other stone works above it. So in order to above that window opening, so in order to safely transmit the load from the top to sideways, so we are providing a lintel. And this is a parapet of a building, and this is the plinth. So you can see a video in which you'll get a better understanding on the same. So this is actually components of a building, where they will explain each components from the foundation. You can see this is the foundation. Foundation is actually lowest part of the building below the surface of the surrounding ground. This is in direct contact with subsoil and transmit all loads onto it. And you can see above each part is explained. This is actually the plinth. Plinth is defined as a portion of the structure between the surface of the surrounding ground and floor level of the building. So this is actually plinth. You will they've highlighted that part. This is floor structure. Floor structure is also highlighted, marked and highlighted. And now this this is actually the masonry wall units. This is brick masonry. Masonry means brick kondu kattuna. That's known as brick masonry. If it's made up of stone, we can call it as stone masonry. So there are different types of bonds in brick masonry. All those things we'll learn in the coming chapters. So this is actually the lintel that they are talking about. You can see how it is arranged and how it's fixed to the wall. The highlighted part is the lintel, and the outward projection is actually the sunshade. I think you can see it. So this is actually the sunshade, and inside the sunshade it is connected to the lintel. Lintel is actually the long structure which is now currently highlighted. And now they are highlighting the sunshades. So while all these questions are asked for the exam, it's always better to explain in your own terms rather than to blindly follow any definition. It's always better to explain in your own terms. So this is actually the sill. This is very important since all the plans and all the drawings will be drawn on the base of the sill level. That means the level at which we provide the window. Above the sill, we'll provide the window. So that level is known as sill level. So all the drawings will be drawn at the level of sill. You can also notice that above the door opening, and there will be a lintel will be provided. So why it's provided, you can see it again. So you can see a lintel above the door opening. So this frame may not be able to carry the load from the top, so we'll be providing a lintel with a much more stronger material. You can see this is actually the column. If you notice, this is actually the column. They have marked the column. This column is actually an isolated vertical load bearing member, the width of which is neither less than the thickness. And the stair, they've marked stair also. That we'll see column again. So its actual definition you can see. A column is an isolated column is an isolated vertical load bearing member, the width of which is neither less than its thickness or less than 4 times the width. So you need to all these things you will be knowing. You already know all these stuff, but you need to know the terminology of all these parts and components. So they have done explaining the components of a building. So I hope everyone have understood the video and understood what are all the components and where they are placed. Arsha, Anil. Arsha.
Yes, sir.
So have you understood about the different components of a building and where they are placed?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next thing we had discussed earlier was regarding the building areas. we have talked about several areas. So first thing we'll discuss about plinth area. So plinth area means the area of the building at the plinth level. You know what is plinth? So if we go back to our drawing, we'll see this is the plinth. So plinth area means the area of a building at the plinth. So plinth area means the area of the building at the plinth level. Does not include the area of open porch, which is not enclosed by wall, or other uncovered staircases. All those things won't be included in while we uh, while we calculate plinth area. It's actually calculated by taking the external dimensions and excluding the plinth offset. So actually, what is meant by plinth offset? So you need to understand that there will be a small offset whenever you see. See, have you seen? There's a small offset. We'll just take till the exterior of the wall, but we won't go to the outer side of the plinth. We'll just take the dimensions of the outer side of the wall. We won't include the offset of the plinth. That means there's a small distance which is projected outwards from the wall, which is a part of the plinth, but that area we won't consider while we calculate the plinth area. So that's known as plinth area. And next is built-up area. Built-up area means the total area covered by the building at all 4 levels. It shall also include area of mezzanine floor, galleries, varsity, and penthouse at terrace level. So all these definitions we have different figures, and in the next slide, coming slides, so you can understand what's meant by these terms. So this is known as built-up area. Is the total area covered by the building at all floor levels. Covered by the building at all floor levels. You need to understand the definition. And next is floor area. So floor area is the total area of a floor between the walls. It consists of all rooms, verandas, passages, corridors, staircase room, entrance hall, kitchen, bath, latrine, etc. The sill of doors and windows are not included in the floor area. That means it is the area between the floors, between the walls. Understand? The floor area means the area of floor between the walls, and we will add all the floor areas. Built-up area means the total area covered by the building at all floor levels. Wherever which all part of the building is covered, all those area will come under built-up area. The floor area means it is the area between the walls of the building. That means we will just take the interior dimensions of a room. That's known as floor area. So in order to get the floor area, what we are doing is like we'll subtract the area occupied by the wall from the plinth area. So plinth area, while we are calculating the plinth area, we'll include the area occupied by the wall also. But while we calculate the floor area, we will skip the area occupied by the wall, and we'll just take the interior dimensions. That's known as floor area. So I hope everyone have understood this. Shall I ask someone? Abhinav Purushothaman. Abhinav.
Sir?
Abhinav, could you please explain what you have understood from these plinth area and built-up area and also floor area?
Yes, sir.
Explain in your own words rather than reading out from the screen. Just explain in your own words. You can explain in Malayalam too.
Okay, sir. Sir, plinth area means area built in the plinth level. The area that is near to the door, below the sir, it is below the door near to something.
Yeah, at the level below the
At
door.
the level
That's on the
of
plinth level.
floor, at the level of the floor.
Okay. So what all things will come under plinth area, and what all things we don't include under plinth area?
Sorry, sir, I didn't get that part.
So actually, we will include all the area which
Yes, sir.
are closed. That means we don't include area of open porch and
Closed
also the
areas.
uncovered staircases. That means those staircases which we provide um, from the outside of the building. You might have seen in many houses where staircases are provided from the outside to the terrace. So that area occupied by the staircases won't be included under plinth area. And also the area of the porch won't be included under plinth area. So only those area which come under the main walls will be taken as a plinth area. That means we'll include the area occupied by the walls also for plinth area. And built-up area means wherever there is roof above that area, that those area will be taken as built-up area. And in many cases, the plinth area and built-up area may come, might be equal. In some cases, as I have explained earlier about the old traditional style of building known as Naligatu.
Yes.
In that type of structure, plinth area and built-up area will be different. That means in the built-up area, the open space won't be included.
Considered.
So if you go to the definition of built area, built-up area means the total area covered by the building at all floor levels. So it shall also include the area of mezzanine floor. Mezzanine floor is actually, you might have seen some in some auditoriums you have in some theaters, for example, you have some balcony. Understand?
Yes.
So that type of floor is known as mezzanine floor. I have a figure for the mezzanine floor, so I'll show that. So you can see this is actually a mezzanine floor. This is not a main floor, but this is actually a kind of a balcony thing which is constructed inside a main floor. So this is known as mezzanine floor. So that area will also be taken under built-up area. And you can see this versatility. This means we are constructing a small construction on the terrace. This area will also come under built-up area. And this penthouse. So this penthouse, we have an extra balcony. You can see here. So all these things will also come under built-up areas.
So I have a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mezzanine floor.
Yeah.
Why is it constructed, sir? Like I didn't understand the use.
There are many uses. If you see in some auditoriums, have you seen like there will be some area where they have separated for audiences, especially if it's
like
a
the
sports
control
stadium.
part.
Yeah.
Okay.
In some shopping malls also you might see they will be given for some small coffee shops, so that they won't occupy the main part. See the total height of that particular area at a particular area might be more than sufficient for 2 or 3 shops to be included in that. But if we give that area for a single shop I'm talking about shopping complex, it may not be economical. So we will divide it into 2-3 with 2-3 mezzanine floors, and we will give each floor to one shop owner. That shop owner might not require much area above his head. So that's why we are giving mezzanine floor. And also this is commonly provided in auditoriums where have you seen some basketball courts? So there will be some space for people to watch, and we will divide it into several levels. So this mezzanine floor is provided in such cases, and it's not commonly given in homes, but still in large houses you can also give some mezzanine floor. This is not actually a floor which divides the building into several levels. It's just given as a small division between the same level. This is known as mezzanine floor. This is very commonly seen in auditoriums and shopping complexes. Hope you have understood.
Yes, sir. Yeah, yes, sir.
So this is actually built-up area will include all those galleries, mezzanine floor, basement, penthouse, and penthouse at terrace level. All those things will come under built-up area. And if you want to calculate the floor area, what we need to do, you'll just take the interior dimensions. That means in built-up area, we will include the area occupied by the walls also. But while we are taking floor area, we'll just take the interior dimensions of the building. We will skip the area occupied by the wall. So floor area means plinth area minus area occupied by the wall. So this is known as floor area. And next we'll see what is meant by carpet area. So carpet area, it is a useful area or livable area or lettable area. So that means if you are constructing as I earlier said, a shopping complex, all those areas cannot be given as a useful area. Some areas we will have to provide it for some other purposes. That we can see from the below definition. Carpet area is equal to total floor area. That means total floor area means the total dimension, interior dimensions. We are not taking the area of the walls, but total interior dimensions minus circulation area, veranda, corridor, passage, staircase, lift, sanitary accommodation. So if you want to find out the carpet area for the building, what we'll do is like we'll find out the total floor area of the building and we will subtract all the areas like circulation area, veranda, corridor, passage, etc. If you see the definition, is a useful area or livable area or lettable area. That means for a shopping complex, we can't we can lease out. We can lease out area, a circulation area, veranda. All this area will be common. We cannot lease out all these areas. Sanitary accommodation, passage, staircase, lift. All these areas will be provided as a common area. Those areas we cannot use for any other purpose. That means for if you want to provide for some retail shops, we cannot give those areas. So carpet area is actually the useful area of a building. So if it's a shopping complex, it's the area occupied by all the retail shops, and it will we won't include the passages or staircase, lift, or any other areas which are intended for common use. So I will ask someone. Abhirami KP.
Yes,
Abhirami.
sir.
So could you please explain what is meant by carpet area to your friends in your own language, rather than reading out from the screen?
Okay, sir. It's an area that can be used to in a home or any building. Carpet area is an area which can be used to spread something. A carpet, it is a usable area, and it includes the wall inside our house and
Area in between the walls.
not in between. It will include the internal walls.
Carpet area. Actually, the total floor area means we won't include the area occupied by the walls. We'll just include the area in between the walls.
Okay. Mainly the distance between those walls is referred to as carpet area.
But in carpet area, you need to understand what's the difference between floor area and carpet area?
Floor area, it's a area of the particular plot.
No, floor area is actually floor area is of a building is actually the area occupied area between the walls of that building.
Okay.
You won't include the area occupied by the walls. So in between the walls of the building.
Okay.
Are you confused with the exterior wall? That means, are you confused with the compound walls, with the building wall? We are talking about a building, not a compound. So floor area of a building is actually the area in between the walls of that building, of that particular building. Then carpet area means from that floor area, we'll reduce those areas which are intended for common use, like
Okay,
passages,
okay.
staircase,
Okay.
etc. So you need not confuse it with the compound wall. It's like we are talking
Okay.
about the building walls.
Okay.
That's why I think you have talked about plot of the area of the plot, something like that.
Nice.
Okay. So here we are talking about building areas only, and here we will take the here we will take the area in between the walls only as a floor area. And
Sir,
yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt. When we take the apartment area, like for a flat as such, what area do we take? Is it like floor area or carpet area?
like when we are going to buy from some
Yeah,
builders,
suppose,
like
yeah, suppose Skyline
yeah, they'll just talk about the build area. They'll just tell the total
rent
area.
area.
Area is square feet. That means
Okay.
it's actually the print area.
Mm.
It will include the area taken by the interior walls and all those things. They won't
Okay.
mention the floor area. They'll just talk about the print area.
Okay. Thank you.
Understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And next we'll talk about the floor area ratio. We have discussed it already. Still, we will go see it once again. Floor area ratio means the quotient obtained by dividing the total floor area on all floors by the area of the plot. Here we will divide the total floor area of all the floors of a building. If that particular building has 10 floors, and the floor area of each floor is about maybe 10 or 100 meter square, total floor area will become 1000 meter square, and we will take the total floor area and we will divide it with the total plot area. That means the area of the plot in which the building is constructed. That might be 2000 meter square, something around that. So floor area ratio is actually the is obtained by dividing the total floor area with the total floor area of all the floors of a building with the plot area, the plot where the building is situated. This is known as floor area ratio. So just a basic definition and all these things. So we have seen this mezzanine floor, basati, penthouse, etc. And now we'll just, I hope everyone have understood regarding the various terminologies used for the components of the building and also various areas that are mentioned. Is there any confusion on the same? You can point out now. Okay, I hope everyone have understood. So next, we can just move on to some building codes that are in use in our area. So first one we are going to discuss is about the National Building Code. So we'll see what is it is. So the National Building Code of India, NBC, it's known as NBC, is a comprehensive building code. It's a national instrument providing guidelines for regulating the building construction activities across the country. So wherever we are in India, wherever we are going to construct a building, we'll have to refer the National Building Code. So there are some specifications and some basic dimensions and all those things mentioned in NBC. So we'll have to refer NBC before we are planning a building. So this is known as National Building Code of India. So the code was first published in 1970 by BIS and at the instance of Planning Commission, and then first revised in 1983. So it was first published in 1970 by BIS. BIS means Bureau of Indian Standards. So from now you will start to hear the term BIS like anything, because BIS has a standard for every thing that's manufactured. In civil engineering, whatever construction activity is being carried out, the materials used for the construction or the design criteria used for the construction. So all those design criteria, the quality of the materials, etc. So we'll have to adhere to BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards. Only then we'll get a permission. Only then we'll get a permission from the government and also from the client which we are providing our work. So BIS is very important. So BIS has several codes for several materials. Suppose we are going to construct a building in an earthquake-prone area, we'll have a separate code for that. Earthquake codes are there. And then if you're going to construct in a coastal zone, there are some codes for coastal zones. And regarding the use of materials, specifications of the materials, maybe if the quality of the material like cement, sand, steel bars. So all these things will be defined by the BIS as separate codes, and we'll have to follow those. So if you are going to construct a building, whether it is a reinforced concrete building, there is a code for that. It's known as IS 456, the Indian standard 456. So BIS will have several numbers. So you might have heard about BIS during some advertisements, especially this jewelry advertisements. You will have you might have heard about BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards. So for each and every material that is being sold or designed in India, we'll have to follow some specifications. So similarly, for civil engineering, also we have like a 10 or 15 codes to be followed, which are written by BIS, and we have to refer to BIS, and we have to see whether our design procedure or our material quality is as per the code defined. So the National Building Code was first published in 1970 by BIS, and then at the instance of Planning Commission of India, and then first revised in 1983. So, and as per the NBC, we will define several. So NBC there are different types of buildings. So next we are going to discuss about the different types of buildings. So first of all, you need to understand that the buildings will be classified based on occupancy, fire resistance capacity, height of the building, mode of load transfer, type of material used for construction, etc. There are mainly, these are the different classifications. So according to National Building Code of India, buildings are classified based on occupancy. So this is the first classification. So occupancy is the first classification. You can see occupancy is the first classification. Next is the fire resistance capacity, then height of the building, mode of load transfer, type of material used for construction, etc. So first classification based on occupancy. So what is actually defined as Group A is residential buildings, Group B is educational buildings, Group C institutional buildings, Group D assembly buildings, Group E business buildings, Group F mercantile buildings, Group G industrial buildings. So these are the classifications based on the occupancy. You know what's meant by a residential building. It might be an residential apartment or any other thing. And educational buildings, it might be a school, college, institutional building. Similarly, there's a spelling mistake here. So institutional building and assembly buildings where these are the auditoriums and all those things. You might have heard about the assembly buildings and auditoriums. And next is a business building. That means the commercial buildings and mercantile buildings where there are different merchants, and industrial buildings. Then storage buildings. There are hazardous buildings. So these are the classifications, main classification as per based on the occupancy of the building as per the National Building Code of India. There are different groups, Group A to Group J. So let us see all these in detail. So Group A, residential buildings. So building or any part of the building in which a sleeping accommodation is provided for normal residential purposes with or without cooking or dining facilities. So this is actually a residential building. That means a building or a part of the building in which sleeping accommodation is provided for normal residential purposes with or without cooking or dining facilities. So buildings come under this group include lodging or rooming houses, one or two family private dwellings, dormitory, apartment house, hotels, etc. So not only private residential houses, but also lodges, hotels, and dormitories. All those things will also come under residential buildings. Even in our campus, there are our buildings will be defined on basis of like 2 or 3 different purpose, different occupancy classifications. Like our hostels might be constructed on the codes mentioned for a residential building. That means it will be given like for these many occupants, there should be these many number of toilets. There should be the quantity of water storage should be something like this. There should be this much number of windows. The area of common area, a common place to be used for recreational purpose should be defined for something like this. So it will be different for our hostel building, and also for it will be different for our main building. So you need to understand that for constructing different kind of building, you have to refer the codes for different classifications. So we have seen the definition of a residential building. It may not be necessarily a private residential house or a private residential apartment. Lodges, dormitories, hotels, hostels can also come under residential buildings. And next group B is educational building. In educational building, these include any building used for school, college, or daycare purposes for more than 8 hours per week, involving assembly for instruction, education, or recreation. So, educational buildings will come under those buildings will come under educational buildings. Buildings which are used for school, college, or daycare purposes, in which more than 8 hours per week. If a building is there and we are using that building more than 8 hours per week for this educational purpose, and which involve the assembly for instruction, education, and recreation. So all this buildings will come under group B, which is known as educational buildings. And next is group C, institutional buildings. Let us see what is meant by an institutional building. So these include any building or part of the building which is used for a purpose such as medical or other treatment or care of persons suffering from physical or mental illness or diseases. So mainly institutional buildings will include hospitals. So you can see the examples are hospitals and nursing homes, custodial institutions like home for aged and infants, orphanages, penal institutions like jails, prison, mental hospitals. So all those things will come under this institutional building category. This is known as group C. And next we will see group D, assembly buildings. So these include any building or part of a building where group of people not less than 50 gather for amusement, recreation, social, religious, patriotic, civil, travel, or similar purposes. Like we can see the examples are theater, exhibition halls, museums, gymnasium, restaurant, temple, church. So all those things are known as will come under group D category. It's known as assembly buildings, where a group of people not less than 50 might gather for amusement, recreation, social, religious, or patriotic, civil, or any other purpose. This is known as assembly buildings. So all these different groups of building will have different modes of construction or different quality of construction required, and also the area distribution of a useful area will be different for different buildings. So next is the business buildings, which will come under group E. In this, these include any building or part of a building which is used for their transaction for keeping of the accounts and records and similar purposes. So business buildings will come under library, banking and financial institutions, professional establishments of doctors, engineers, lawyers, etc. So wherever there are business happening, or we need to keep some records or accounts or transaction or something like that, all those things will come under business buildings, and it will be categorized as Group E buildings. And next is Group F building, which is the mercantile buildings. So these include any building or part of a building which is used as shops, stores, markets, for display and sale of merchandise, either wholesale or retail. So this is known as Group Mercantile Building, which will come under the Group F. So what are all those things? Normal commercial buildings like shops, stores, markets, and display and sale of merchandise, wholesale or retail shops, etc. will come under mercantile buildings. This is the Group F. And next is the Group G buildings, which is the industrial buildings. So these include any building or part of a building or structure in which products or materials of all kinds and properties are fabricated, assembled, or processed. You might know any parts which are fabricated, assembled, or processed. All those things will come under industrial buildings. Example: assembly plants, power plants, refineries, laboratories, pumping stations. So all those buildings will be categorized under Group G, is known as industrial buildings. And next is the Group H, which is storage buildings. So these include any building or part of a building used primarily for storage of sheltering of goods, wares or merchandise, vehicle or animal. So all these things will come under storage buildings. Examples of warehouses, cold storage, storehouses, etc. Like warehouses of Food Corporation of India, FCA godowns, and where we have to store something like animal or cold storage, any other storehouses, etc. will come under the storage buildings and Group H. And next, last category based on occupancy is hazardous building. So these include any building or part of building which is used for the storage, handling, and manufacture or processing of highly combustible, explosive, poisonous, irritant, corrosive, or toxic materials. So when some chemicals or which are very poisonous or explosives are manufactured, we won't categorize it as an industrial building. We will separately mention it as a hazardous building, so that a more safer type of construction for the building will be required. And in order to dispose of the waste and all other things, we need to give a proper provision for the same. So in order to do that, we'll categorize those buildings in which highly toxic or hazardous substances are manufactured. We'll categorize all those buildings as hazardous buildings and Group J buildings. So I hope everyone have understood what's meant by these types of buildings. We'll see once again the based on the occupancy, the building as per NBCI is categorized as into Group A, residential buildings, Group B, educational buildings, Group C, institutional buildings, Group D, assembly, Group E, business buildings, Group F, mercantile buildings, Group G, industrial buildings, Group H, storage buildings, and Group J, hazardous buildings. Is Others K here? Others K?
Yes, sir.
So Others, just explain what's meant by Group A residential buildings and what all buildings might come under this category.
So residential buildings is the building which sleeping accommodations are provided
Okay.
with or without the cooking facilities.
Okay.
This
Give some
can be
examples also.
these can be lodges or dormitories, hostels, etc.
Okay. Yeah, very good. So next I'll ask Adil. Adil,
Sir.
so could you please explain what's meant by educational buildings and give some examples of buildings which can come under this category?
A category.
Group B educational buildings.
അസംബ്ലി ബിൽഡിംഗ് ഇതാണോ സർ? ഹലോ,
Assembly അല്ല, educational buildings.
അതിന്റെ സർ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ എന്നത് ഒന്ന് റിപ്പീറ്റ് ചെയ്യോ?
Let's explain what is meant by the Group B category of educational buildings and which all buildings will come under this category. Give some examples too.
സ്കൂൾസ്
On what basis we are defining it as an educational building? Just see. Let's see what's given the definition. So these include any building used for school, college, or daycare purpose for more than 8 hours per week, involving assembly, education, or recreation. Understood.
Okay, sir. Understood. Thank you for asking.
Aju Ajal.
Yes, sir.
So, do you think why don't you think like a college or a school will come under Group C institutional building? Do you think a school or a college will come under Group C?
Sir, it is educational buildings.
Okay. So, what all things will come under institutional building? Example.
അറിയില്ല സാറേ.
Basically, hospitals. You see, institutional buildings. Like these include any building or part of building which is used for purpose such as medical or other treatment or care of persons suffering from physical or mental illness or diseases. Hospitals, nursing homes, jails, prison, mental hospitals, all those things will come under institutional building. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I hope all this classification is clear. Does anyone have any doubt on the same? If there's no doubt, then we'll move on to the next topic, just based on the fire resistance capacity classification based on fire resistance capacity.
So, does these power plants, the nuclear power plants, and all come under hazardous buildings?
Yeah, yes. Nuclear power plants will come under hazardous building because it's not an industrial building, and the hazardous level is quite high, so it will come under hazardous building.
Okay.
So next is based on the fire resistance capacity. So in which there are different types of construction. First is like type 1 construction. That means the fireproof construction in which all the structural components are incombustible and should be fire resistant for 4 hours. So this is actually in this type of construction, all these structural components should be incombustible and should be fire resistant for 4 hours. That means we will have a time of 4 hours for us to help the occupants escape from the building. So there will be 4 hours left once the fire has started. So the fire resistance of the building should be 4 hours. With that 4 hours, it should not damage the building structural integrity. That's known as type 1 construction. And in type 2 construction, in type 1 construction, all the structural components should be incombustible. That means none of the structural components should be combustible. Combustible, and the structural integrity should not be decreased as a result of a fire hazard. That's known as type 1 construction. And in type 2 construction, all the structural components should be incombustible, and also it should be fire resistant for 3 hours. That means we will have a 3-hour gap in order to help people escape from the situation. And type 3 construction is the exterior portion should be incombustible and inner parts might be combustible. And the fire resistance for will be 2 hours. And the type 4 construction is exterior walls and floors constructions are of combustible materials and fire resistant for 1 hour. That means there are 4 types of construction, in which the best fire resistant construction will be the type 1, in which we'll have a 4-hour fire resistant fire resistance of the building will be 4 hours, and we'll have sufficient gap for us to rescue all the occupants of the building before the fire takes their life, and none of the structural components of the building should be combustible. That means it is of the higher quality. And as we go down from type 1 to type 4, the quality of the building and the fire resistance will decrease. If we go to type 2 construction, even though the structural components are combustible, the fire resistance will be only for 3 hours. And in type 3, the exterior portion will be incombustible and the inner part will be combustible. And in type 4, what will happen is exterior walls and floor constructions are of combustible materials. So can I ask anyone a question? Can anyone voluntarily reply? So which is a steel building, a building made up purely of steel, or a concrete building is more fire resistant? Could anyone reply voluntarily? Can anyone reply voluntarily, or should I call out the names? Deva Nair. Is Deva Nair here?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay. So based on your opinion, which building is more fire resistant or safe to be in case of a fire, a steel building or a concrete building?
It's a concrete building.
Why? So basically the answer is like, you might have noticed the case of 2001 World Trade Center attack. The World Trade Center, in the top floors were basically made up of steel. And what happened was, like, once the crash happened, the plane was blasted and the temperature went up to nearly 1200 degrees Celsius. So at that temperature, what happened was, like, the steel got melted and the steel started to flow down like anything. The essential structural component, the beams and columns, which were supposed to hold the building properly, started to melt down and it started to collapse like anything. So if it was a concrete building, that would have sustained a little more impact from fire. So even if we noticed, if a building has been subjected to a fire hazard, if it's a steel building, then it will be very difficult for us to repair that. That means the basic property of the steel will be reduced. But if it's a concrete building, after some modifications, that building can be reused. So it's always safe to be in a concrete building in case of a fire hazard. Not only a fire hazard, but also in case of a bomb blast or other nuclear attacks or any other thing, it's always safe to be in a RCC building. That means even though the temperature might shoot up, the concrete won't get melted that soon. It might be more stable against temperature. So it's always better to be in a RCC building. So these are the types of buildings based on the resistance capacity, fire resistance capacity. We have 4 types at that type 1 construction, type 2, and until type 4. And based on the fire resistance means the components should have a fire resistance. Even some doors, we will categorize these doors. There are some parts which you need to understand the type 1 construction, that all the structural components can be incombustible, but there are some non-structural components. That means which does not give much strength to the building, but which we use in a building for our regular use, like doors, windows, etc. So all those things might be made up of wood, and those materials won't have that fire resistant property. Still, we will we will label it, or we will categorize all those doors and windows, etc., to be fire resistance. It might not have a fire resistance of 4 hours. Basically, it might have the best quality of doors might have a fire resistance of about 30 minutes. So this fire doors might so as per, if the fire resistance time increases, then we'll get more time to rescue the people from the building. So that's why it is always preferred to use type 1 construction, where all the materials have a proper fire resistance capacity. But you need to notice that the cost of construction of such a building will be very high when compared with normal building. And the third classification based on height. The first classification was based on the occupancy. Second classification was based on the fire resistance capacity. And the third classification is based on height. So based on height, we will divide a building into 2: a high-rise building and low-rise building. So as per NBCI, building is called a high-rise building if the total height is greater than 15 meters. Height means from the ground level. If the height of the building is greater than 50 meters, we will categorize it as a high-rise building. While the height is less than 15 meters, we will categorize the building as a low-rise building. So this is a classification based on height. And next classification is fourth classification based on the load transfer. So first is load-bearing masonry one. We have discussed about this earlier. If the masonry wall is designed to take the loads from the top, from the above, it's known as a load-bearing masonry wall. And if it is not designed for that purpose, it's known as non-load-bearing masonry wall. So load-bearing masonry walls, masonry building, load from the floors are transferred through masonry wall to the foundation. And in frame buildings, what we use is we'll use framework of beams and columns to transfer the load to the building. So you might have noticed in many high-rise buildings that are being currently constructed, you will see the framework of columns and beams. If you can see some buildings that are coming up in our locality nowadays, most of the buildings are framed buildings in which the beams and columns are used to transfer the loads. Earlier, it was masonry buildings. So masonry buildings, we can't build a high-rise building with a masonry building because it will be very difficult to align the masonry walls vertically. If something happens and if the vertical alignment is disturbed, then the whole building will collapse. We will never use a load-bearing masonry building for a high-rise structure. If it's a high-rise structure, it is frame building. And even nowadays for low-rise structures or single-story residential buildings, people have started to use frame building, because frame building will have a better resistance against earthquake, wind, and other natural disasters. So if in a load bearing masonry building, that the common construction practice for residential buildings in our place, where the loads will be transferred to the walls. That I think most of our homes will be constructed by using load bearing masonry walls, where the walls are designed to take the load. So it is very unsafe in a case of an earthquake, where the vertical alignment of that wall is disturbed, the whole building will collapse. So in an earthquake accident, if we take the data from an earthquake, so we'll notice that casualties will be more for people who were dwelling in load bearing wall structures rather than high-rise buildings. That means for the casualty will be high in case of small buildings, because the small buildings might be constructed using load-bearing walls, and that will not be sufficient in resisting earthquakes, winds, and other horizontal forces. So nowadays we are using frame buildings. The frame buildings advantage is that not only we have columns and beams to take the loads, both the vertical and horizontal loads, we also have a reinforcement in that. So a reinforcement will hold the total building as a single unit, and the single unit will have the strength to accumulate small deflections and other things. So we'll use frame buildings nowadays. So this is based on the load transfer, the category, and the classification. First is the load bearing masonry building, and next is the frame building. So, excuse me. So our third classification, fourth classification was based on the load transfer. And next, fifth classification is based on the type of material used for the construction. So there are different materials that can be used for the construction of a building, and you can see what are the classification based on the material used for the construction. So first is the earthen building, next is the thatched building, masonry building, steel building, wooden building, and Rcc building. So in earthen building, what the basic construction material will be soil. Nowadays this practice is very uncommon, even though in some places there are people still following this procedure, in which the buildings will be made up of earth, soil. They will mix soil with water, and they'll make a paste, and they will construct the building using soil. You need to understand that there is no need to provide a foundation for an earthen building. Why basically we are providing a foundation? Because foundation is actually provided to distribute the load in a larger area. In earthen building, the thing happens is like, first of all, the load from the building will be very less, and next is that we are using the same material which is present as our soil for construction. But in case of an Rcc building or some other building, we are using different materials. So that's why we need a foundation at a given depth. So we are using two different materials, like our structure which takes the total weight will be the soil, but the materials which are used will be concrete. So we need to properly distribute the load from different materials to the soil. That's why we are providing foundation. But in case of an earthen building, we need not provide a foundation. The building is very large. The building is very small, because first of all, the load will be very less, and also we are using the same material. There won't be much difference in the material, and the thing is like both the soils will expand and contract based on the climate equally. So that might not lead to cracks. So there is no need to provide foundations in large depth. We just have to provide a level surface for the construction. So that's an earthen building, but there are some disadvantages also. The main disadvantage is like it is susceptible to rain and other climatic changes. Once the rain happens, the property of the soil will get property will change, and that can lead to the collapse. And next is the thatched building. Thatched building you might have seen നമ്മുടെ പുല്ല് മേഞ്ഞ വീട് അതാണ് thatched building എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. So in olden days we used to construct thatched building. We used to bring some bamboo and we used to construct the walls, and we used to thatch the roof with leaves or any other substances, and those buildings are known as thatched building. The main disadvantage is like it is susceptible to fire. Next is the masonry building. Masonry building is very common, and nowadays we are using a masonry building still now. That means the wall of the building is constructed using masonry, and roof might be an RCC roof, a concrete slab, or a tiled roof. So still the walls will be of masonry. Next category is the steel building. Steel building is gaining popularity now because of the ease of construction. That means it won't take much time for the construction. If we are bringing some prefabricated modules and we are installing it in our particular site, it is easy for us to construct, and also we can save a lot of time. So steel building is now gaining popularity. Similarly, wooden building, but the disadvantage of wooden building is like it is susceptible to fire. So wooden building also has some disadvantages, but the main advantage of wooden building is similar to steel building. That means we can prefabricate. We can prefabricate all these modules or the walls, and we can directly install it at the place, and it can reduce the time of construction. And the last category is RCC building, which is a very common construction practice which we follow now. So RCC means reinforced cement concrete, in which reinforced means we will be reinforcing the concrete using steel bars. That means we'll give an additional strength to the concrete using steel bars, and basically we'll be using cement as the binding material. That's known as reinforced cement concrete. In olden days, instead of cement, when cement was not so common, we used to use lime mortar or surki. So all these things we used to use earlier, but nowadays since cement is very common, the common construction practice what we follow is RCC building. So this is the classification based on the materials for construction. So these are the things which I want to tell you today. So what we have discussed is like the classification of buildings based on National Building Code. The first classification was based on occupancy, and we had like 10 classifications, 10 different groups based on the occupancy classification. And next we discussed about the classification based on fire resistance capacity, and it had 4 types of construction practices. And next was based on the height, which is known as high-rise building and low-rise building. And next 4th category was based on the load transfer. That means either it is a load-bearing walls or a framed structure. So and the 5th category was types on them based on the materials used. So is Diya Jojan here? Diya Jojan? Diya Jojan?
Yes, sir.
So Diya, could you please explain the 4th classification based on transfer? What are the different, what's meant by a load-bearing masonry building and a frame building? Could you please explain it to everyone? You can explain in your own words.
Load bearing masonry building. Load from floors are transferred through masonry wall to the foundation. Load bearing masonry building means it is something transferred through the masonry wall to the foundation.
Okay, and the
Not from
frame building?
frame work of beams and columns transfer the load to the foundation.
Okay. So, is your home under which category your home belongs? Your house belongs? Is it a load? Is it made of a load-bearing masonry building, or is it a framed building?
I think it is frame building.
When was it constructed?
I think it's something 8 or 10 years ago.
Okay. How did you know that it's a frame building? Have you seen the columns and beams?
I don't know. I have. I don't know.
Have you understood what's meant by a framed building? Have you seen some high-rise buildings that are being constructed along the roads,
No.
where you can see the skeleton of the building? That means you'll just see some columns and beams.
No, I don't.
Okay, I think there's some confusion between this. Let me. So, 1 minute. I'll just show you. I'll just stop presenting my screen so that I can search the framed buildings. So currently, now I can press my screen. So hope you can see the screen, and if you notice this my screen, you can see this is actually a frame building. You can see the columns and beams which are used to transfer the loads. See, this is actually the frames. You can see the frames. Understood? These are the frames. That means we have a column, beam, and slabs, and these loads are transferred. The loads on the floors are transferred to beams, and then these are transferred to columns, and finally to the foundation. So hope you can see. We can see the frame structure. Dear, now have you understood what's meant by a frame structure?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, this is actually the basic frame of a building, and you might notice while you are passing through some areas where these type of buildings are being constructed. The first we will construct this basic structure of a building, and then once the structural part is completed, then we will start to construct walls. Since walls is not important here, since they are not anymore taking any loads, there is no need to construct walls using bricks, since there's no need for transfer the loads through walls. So it can be of glass or some wooden cardboards or anything else. So that's the advantage of framed buildings, and this building is actually uh, gaining very popularity since a few decades. That means it has a capacity to resist earthquakes and other horizontal forces also. So nowadays all buildings are being constructed, all high-rise buildings, or even buildings which are more than two-story, even more than one story is being constructed using frames, so that we need not provide walls in between them, and we can provide anything like glass. Maybe we can provide in between as a walls, since they are not taking any loads. But if you notice this picture on the right, this is actually an example for a load bearing walls. Here the loads are being transferred through walls. There are no beams and columns. The loads are transferred using walls, and this finally transferred to the foundation. So all these examples are for load bearing walls. See. Here there are some columns. Here also there are some columns, and there are. It's actually the typical example for load bearing walls. Have you understood what's the difference between a load bearing wall and a frame structure?
Yes, sir. I understand.
Okay, now can you tell in which category your house belongs to?
Load bearing.
Okay, might be, it can be. In some cases, people have started to construct even residential houses in the same manner of frame structure also. But I don't know if it was an 8 or 10 years ago, it might be a load bearing structure. Better refer it with your parents. And okay, so that's all for today's class. I hope everyone have understood what we have discussed today. And if there's any doubt, please do ask. So I'll just call out the names of the absentees. If anyone have joined in between, they can just. So in ADS class, the only absentee is Gino Gigi. Is Gino Gigi present? No. So in CS, the absentees are Anjita Nambiar, Basim, Nikhil. Nikhil was present, okay? Nikhil, Siddharth Keshav, Sonu Raju.
Siddharth is present, sir.
Siddharth is present. Sonu Raju is present, right? 1 minute. Shamit.
I think the student in ADS batch is not in ADS batch. That's Janoj. I don't know. He's not in our batch.
Sir, Zenodiji has changed from this college.
Oh, okay. Then need not worry. She'll be removed from the role soon. So everyone in ADS is present, I guess. So in CS, the absentees are once again Anjita Nambiar is absent. Basim is absent. Harsha Muralidharan is absent.
Sir, Harsha present, sir.
Harsha present, okay. Maria Manoj is absent. Maria Manoj is absent. Then Nikhil is present, right? Nikhil present. Siddharth Keshav is present, right?
Yes, sir.
And Sonu Raju, right? Okay. So thank you all. I've marked the attendance. Thank you. We'll see you in the next class.